The Superior Court judge just sentenced Eric R. Holder to 60 years to life for the 2019 murder of Nipsey Hussle, the 33-year-old Grammy-nominated rapper. The shooting happened right outside the clothing store Nipsey founded in South LA, the same neighborhood where both Holder and Nip grew up under similar circumstances. Nearly 4 years after Nipsey's tragic death, which rocked not just LA but the entire hip-hop community, justice was finally served. On March 31, 2019, Nipsey, whose real name was Ermias Asghedom, was shot and killed outside his store. The police quickly pointed to a personal beef as the motive. 2 days later, Holder turned himself in at a mental health clinic. His lawyer said it was a mental health issue, but Holder still got hit with charges for first-degree murder and possession of a firearm by a felon. He pleaded not guilty, with bail set at $6.5 million. During the trial, LA prosecutors said that Nipsey and Holder, both old acquaintances and part of the same street gang, ran into each other in a strip mall parking lot. Nipsey supposedly mentioned some rumors about Holder snitching, and minutes later, Holder came back with 2 guns and started shooting. Prosecutors claimed Eric R. Holder Jr.'s actions were straight-up premeditated and hit him with a first-degree murder charge. Aaron Jansen, Holder's public defender, admitted that his client did pull the trigger, but argued it was done in the heat of the moment. He pushed for a voluntary manslaughter charge instead, but after less than an hour of deliberation on the second day, the jury found Holder guilty of first-degree murder. This verdict showed they believed the prosecutor's argument that Holder made up his mind to kill Nipsey Hussle, calmly walked back to his car, loaded his gun, ate some fries, and then returned to confront Nip. Holder, 33, was also found guilty of 2 counts of attempted voluntary manslaughter for wounding 2 bystanders, a lighter charge than what the prosecutors originally aimed for. Jansen argued that the case was overcharged and that Eric didn't intend to harm those other men who were complete strangers to him. Eric was also convicted of possessing a firearm as a felon and 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. In court, Eric remained stone-faced, rocking a dark navy suit and white sneakers, while the courtroom stayed quiet as the verdict was read. Nipsey Hussle's death in 2019 shook LA's gang culture to its core, sparking peace talks between Bloods and Crips, something that hadn't happened since the early 90s. Nipsey, a respected figure in the rolling 60s Crips, was known for reaching across enemy lines to promote peace. The talks that followed his death echoed the tense moments before the 1992 LA uprising when Tupac Shakur organized a truce picnic in Watts. That event aimed to unite rival gangs under the 26-point Thug Life Manifesto, a code that promoted a more righteous path for those in the streets, condemning snitching, harming civilians, and selling to kids or pregnant women. These efforts, along with Nipsey's influence, helped reduce gang violence in the years that followed. Nipsey, who was just 6 years old during the '92 truce, grew up in South LA just 8 miles away. Fast forward 27 years, and he would be killed on March 31, 2019, in front of the strip mall he owned at Crenshaw and Slauson, the very blocks he made famous. Over the years, Nipsey came closest to realizing Tupac's vision of community upliftment and unity, as he declared on his track, Dedication. Today, Nipsey Hussle is often seen as the Tupac of his generation. Nipsey Hussle was posthumously honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on August 15, 2022, coinciding with what would have been his 37th birthday. The ceremony took place in front of Amoeba Music on Hollywood Boulevard and was attended by family, friends, and fans, including his longtime partner, Lauren London, and fellow artists like Roddy Ricch and YG.
Nipsey Hussle! I think he would want everyone to remember that you can't get to what's possible unless you commit to moving forward. That doesn't mean forgetting where you come from, but it requires acknowledging the reality you were born into and the power you have to change that reality for the better.
During the event, London expressed how Hussle would have been honored by the moment, emphasizing the importance of moving forward and acknowledging one's roots. She encouraged attendees to see the star as a reminder to overcome obstacles and pursue their dreams. The ceremony also featured heartfelt tributes from Nipsey's family, highlighting his legacy as a rapper, entrepreneur, and community leader dedicated to uplifting those around him. Nipsey Hussle grew up in the Hyde Park neighborhood of South LA, the son of an Eritrean immigrant father and a mother whose family moved to California during the Great Migration. Even as a kid, Nipsey was all about excellence. He was a straight-A student, loved poetry, and was so into hip-hop that he built his own computer just to record music. By the time he was at Hamilton High in West LA, Nip was hustling in the hallways, flipping burned CDs for $5 a pop. He also worked at his stepdad's seafood spot in Inglewood and took long bus rides to attend a music program at the Watts Towers. Around this time, he and his brother Sam started making money on the streets near Crenshaw and Slauson, selling everything from weed to bootleg DVDs and t-shirts. Nipsey dropped out of high school at 15 and enrolled at West LA Community College, balancing psychology and English classes with his rap dreams and street hustle. He spent countless hours recording in makeshift home studios in some rough neighborhoods. One of his early tracks caught the attention of Tupac's mom, Afeni Shakur, who invited him and his crew to perform at the release party for Tupac's posthumous album, Better Days, in 2002. But that early buzz didn't lead to instant success, and it took Nip another 6 years to really break through. During that time, he rebranded himself as Nipsey Hussle and took a life-changing trip to Eritrea that shifted his whole perspective.
I wouldn't dare ask in public. I wouldn't put my brother in a situation that would come back and harm him. I had other street dudes on my broadcast before. I know what not to ask them. I'm not going to even though they're comfortable with me, I'm not going to put them in a position to say something unknowingly that will come back and bite them in the back.
In an interview with filmmaker Tariq Nasheed, Nipsey talked about how the trip made him more conscious of his choices and gave him a deeper connection to his African roots and Black American heritage. When he got back to LA, he had a new sense of purpose, which led to his breakthrough 2008 mixtape, Bullets Ain't Got No Name, Vol. 1. Nipsey's flow had the laid-back menace of a young Snoop Dogg, mixed with the raw soul of Tupac, and he became the bridge between the 90s death row era and the new wave of West Coast hip-hop led by Kendrick Lamar and Top Dog Entertainment. By 2009, Nipsey was starting to get some mainstream shine with his debut single, Hustle in the House, which flipped Criss Cross's classic sample. It didn't blow up on the Billboard charts, but it put Nipsey on the map as the next big thing in LA street rap, a throne that had been empty for most of the previous decade. Unlike many of his peers who just copied old West Coast gangsta rap, Nipsey's storytelling brought depth and realism to his tracks, making them timeless anthems. His lyrics painted vivid pictures of relentless grinding, overwhelming pain, and constant threats from enemies. One of his standout tracks from 2008, Paid My Dues, takes listeners back to the Christmas mornings when he and his brother were so broke that their only taste of the holiday was watching a friend open presents. Nipsey's raw talent and growing buzz eventually landed him a deal with Epic Records, but things didn't go as planned. He hit all the major milestones of a rising rap star, gracing the XXL freshman cover, getting a Dr. Dre cosign, and earning respect from LA legends like Snoop Dogg and The Game. But the timing was off. CD sales were crashing, streaming was still years away, and mixtapes weren't making money unless you had Dr. Dre's backing. After a shakeup at Epic brought in a new CEO who wanted Nipsey to collab with EDM producers, he decided to part ways with the label.
Charlie Walker's at RCA, I think now.
Okay.
But Charlie Walker, good dude. Adam Granite was the general manager over there. But in between us working on the album, it was a whole regime change. And new people came into the building. Not L.A. Reid, before L.A. Reid.
Okay.
And it just was a difference of, visions. We had different visions in terms of what they wanted to do with their company, what I wanted to do with my brand. And it shouldn't be a tug of war. It should be like a momentum is built, set a date, drop the album, re-up, do it again.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so when it didn't happen, I wasn't upset or nothing. I was just like, let me figure it out myself. Let's not argue, let's not go back and forth about what we can do. Let me just figure it out myself, you know what I mean? And that was cool about it, like, absolutely. and they gave me a release.
For the next 3 years, Nipsey Hussle seemed to be struggling, at least to those on the outside. While the Bay Area had a thriving scene for independent rappers, LA's closeness to major labels made it feel like you needed their backing to make a real impact. The industry basically wrote Nip off, and while his respect in the streets was solid, the hype around him started to fade. With new stars like Odd Future, YG, Kendrick Lamar, and TDE taking over the West Coast, it looked like Nipsey might end up as just another forgotten name. But with his relentless vision, creativity, and drive, he refused to let that happen. He doubled down on his hustle, living in the studio, building up his all-money in label, and sticking to his philosophy that life's a marathon, not a sprint. His first independent release after leaving the label, The Marathon, came with a digital booklet that included a new manifesto. In it, Nipsey wrote, "I'm driven by both financial and creative motives. The decision I had to make recently is which motive I would give priority to in my career." Nip knew that making short-lived hits for the radio wasn't his path. Instead, he was focused on creating anthems for the LA streets, especially the ones south of Interstate 10. In his essay, he laid out his frustrations with the major labels, the constant changes in execs and A&Rs, the way they meddled with the art, and how that confusion watered down the authenticity that made them want to sign him in the first place. It made perfect sense that his true comeback started with a mixtape named after one of LA's main streets, Crenshaw. When he dropped it in 2013, music felt more disposable than ever, so Nipsey decided to flip the script. He announced that physical copies would be sold for $100 each. It was a bold move that paid off. Jay-Z was so impressed he bought 100 copies for $10,000, giving Nipsey major headlines and a powerful cosign for his business acumen. With his career back on track, Nipsey signed a partnership with Atlantic Records for Victory Lap, his major label debut that went platinum. After a few delays, it finally dropped in early 2018, debuting at number 4 on the Billboard 200, and the single Last Time That I Checked became his first track to hit the Hot 100. But like Tupac, Nipsey's impact went beyond just music. He carried himself with dignity, had a regal vibe, and was generous with his time and resources. As a proud Rollin' 60s Crip, Nipsey famously collaborated with members of the Bloods and quietly worked to reduce violence in the streets. Just before he was killed, he had set up a meeting with the LAPD chief to discuss ways to stop gang violence and improve the lives of local kids. Nipsey was also aware of how gentrification was threatening historically black neighborhoods, so he established his Marathon clothing store in the same Crenshaw and Slauson strip mall where he used to hand out his mixtapes. Unlike many rappers who only use their fame to promote close friends or people they've got a financial stake in, Nipsey mentored and helped bring up the next wave of local stars like O3, Greedo, Buddy, and G Perico. When South Central rapper Drakeo the Ruler was locked up on charges he'd later beat, Nipsey offered to pay his bail, even though they barely knew each other. And during the rise of Donald Trump, Nipsey stole the show with his verse on YG's FDT, the era's defining political anthem. Nipsey's dedication to his community earned him a level of fan loyalty that went way beyond casual listeners. People saw him as one of their own, a true LA legend. Nipsey Hussle's loyalty to his city was unmatched. From day one, he was a local hero, respected for his Dodgers cap, his shout-outs to Mexican culture, and his down-to-earth vibe that went against the Hollywood nonsense. He was a symbol of hope for those who'd been pushed aside, employing local designers and folks from his own hood. Nipsey wasn't just someone who overcame tough times. He stayed true to the place that shaped him. Tragically, this commitment to his community would lead to his death in early 2019, when Eric Holder shot him in front of his Marathon store. Holder was later convicted for the crime. That day, Nipsey was actually at the store to give free clothes to someone recently out of prison and in need. He often stopped by unannounced to catch up with friends and employees. On that Sunday, he spent about 30 minutes signing autographs and taking photos with fans. Meanwhile, a woman named Brianita Nicholson, who was casually dating Holder, was driving him around. She noticed Nipsey outside the store and made a casual comment about his look. Holder, who didn't seem to know Nipsey, decided to approach him for a quick chat after grabbing some chili cheese fries from a nearby spot. Nicholson waited in the car. The conversation between Nipsey and Holder was described as chill, But during it, Nipsey mentioned some rumors about Holder snitching and suggested he get some paperwork to clear things up. It seemed like a regular talk, but clearly it wasn't. After the conversation, Nicholson asked Nipsey for a selfie, which she later posted on Facebook. She said she wasn't worried about any conflict. When they went back to the car, Holder asked Nicholson to drive to another parking lot so he could eat his fries. While there, Nicholson saw Holder loading a 9mm. After a few bites, he walked back to Nipsey's store. Witnesses said Holder confronted Nipsey, said, "You're through," and then opened fire with a gun in each hand, hitting Nipsey at least 10 times and kicking him twice in the head. According to prosecutors, 2 other guys, Cary Lathan and Shermy Villanueva, were also hit by the bullets. Holder, known in the neighborhood as A, was captured on surveillance footage, along with the car he used to flee. When Nicholson saw her car on the news, she came in for a 5-hour police interview. They also searched her car and her mom's house, where Holder had stayed the night before, moving to a Motel 6 to hide out. Miss Nicholson testified that she heard the gunshots but didn't understand what was happening until she saw Nipsey Hussle's death reported online. When Holder first got back to the car, she remembered him saying, "Drive, drive before I slap you." She didn't press him for details out of fear. 2 days later, Mr. Holder was arrested without any issues in Bellflower, California, but no weapons were found. Nicholson later got immunity from prosecution in exchange for her testimony. At first, Holder was represented by Chris Darden, who was famous for prosecuting O.J. Simpson back in 1995. But Darden dropped out of the case after receiving death threats against his family. Holder's defense then fell to Mr. Jansen, a public defender who didn't dispute that Holder was the shooter, but argued the case was overcharged. Jansen claimed Holder was so heated by the snitching rumors that he acted impulsively and shot without planning, saying he should be charged with voluntary manslaughter instead of first-degree murder. He also argued that Holder didn't mean to hurt the other 2 victims and shouldn't be charged with attempted murder for their cases. Despite these arguments, Holder was found guilty and faces life in prison. The whole trial was also influenced by the gang culture's snitching stigma. While many witnesses identified Holder as the shooter, others were hesitant to share details on the stand. One witness even refused to testify, fearing retaliation. Another shooting victim, Mr. Lon, who was hurt in the incident, also wouldn't identify Holder when asked. Detective Cedric Washington from the LAPD testified that this fear of retaliation isn't just a gang issue, but affects many court cases. On February 22, 2023, almost 4 years after the shooting, a judge sentenced Holder to 60 years to life in prison. This included 25 years to life for using a firearm during the crime, plus 10 years for shooting the other victims. Despite all the legal battles, Nipsey's loss is a huge blow. Nipsey stuck to his beliefs about social justice, empowerment, and artistic fearlessness. He wasn't just filling a role, he added a new link to the tradition of hip-hop and LA life. His legacy is an everlasting symbol of hope, bravery, and resistance, inspiring future generations to push back against the status quo and keep running the long race. Nipsey Hussle's story is one for the ages, straight out of the heart of LA. From hustling in the streets to blazing his own trail, he turned every struggle into a stepping stone, never forgetting where he came from. Even when the industry tried to write him off, Nipsey stayed true, grinding through the pain and pushing forward with relentless spirit. His impact goes beyond just music. He was a symbol of hope, a warrior for his community, and a beacon of what's possible when you refuse to settle for less. Though his life was cut tragically short, Nipsey's legacy is a testament to the power of staying true to yourself and your roots. He lived his truth and inspired a new generation to do the same, to fight against the odds and make their mark on the world. Nipsey wasn't just a rapper, he was a movement, a voice for the voiceless, and a living legend whose influence will be felt for years to come. So as we remember Nipsey, let's honor his legacy by keeping the marathon going. Push through the struggle, uplift your community, and never let go of your dreams. Rest in power, Nipsey. Your story, your message, and your spirit will live on forever.